Welcome to Dr. Lotte Science with Soul. I'm Dr. Lotte and the host of this podcast. Today, I am really excited to have John Lockley as a guest for you all. John Lockley is a traditionally trained and apprenticed African shaman known as a Sangoma from South Africa. He spent 10 years apprenticing under his teacher, let me see if I can say this name correctly. You can correct me if I butcher it. Mam Mangwevu. Is that correct?
Mangwevu.
Was close. and she is a well-known medicine woman in the Xhosa tribe, the same tribe as Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu. He has been initiated and baptized to a senior level in both the Xhosa and Swazi Sangoma lineages. He is the author of the book Leopard Warrior and audio teachings, The Way of the Leopard, both produced by Sounds True. Today, John runs Ubuntu and rewilding retreats worldwide, helping people to reconnect to their humanity through earth-centric ceremonies. His latest retreats are dreams and tracking retreats in the Kalahari Desert in Botswana. So welcome, John. It's such an honor to have you as a guest today.
Thank you. Lovely to meet you. Thank you for inviting me.
So you have, there's so much we could talk about. We could be on here for hours, but for those of the people that are listening that don't know anything about your background, so you wrote this book, Leopard Warrior, in which you tell about your journey and how you became a Sangoma shaman. But for those that are not familiar with your work, could you just do like a brief recap of 2 to 5 minutes and tell us a little bit about the book and how you ended up on that path to become a Sangoma?
Yes. Well, I didn't choose to become a Sangoma. So like a lot of traditional shamans, you are chosen. You're chosen by the ancestors, we say, or by the spirit world. And the calling is quite rigorous and quite difficult. So to become a Sangoma in South Africa, we are called through illness. In particular, quite a strong illness, which we call the Twaza illness, or the calling illness. And it's a physical illness, and it's emotional and psychological and spiritual. And it affects your nervous system, and it affects everything really. And so I got really, really sick with that calling for about 7 or 8 years. Between 7 to 10 years, I was very sick. And then I found my teacher in the rural areas of the Eastern Cape in South Africa. And I was brought up in South Africa, and I went to university in the Eastern Cape, and I found my teacher. I found my teacher there as well. So, my story is long, which is why I wrote the book Leopard Warrior. I wrote the book to share with people about how someone becomes a shaman, because I know in the West, the word shamanism is quite glamorized and quite misunderstood as well. So I wanted to explain and share through my own experience how I became a traditional shaman and how difficult it is. And also to talk about African spirituality, because it's also terribly, terribly misunderstood. And then the third thing is to also talk about how it doesn't matter what color your skin is. It doesn't matter what you look like or where you're from. Anyone has the potential to be called to become a shaman. It doesn't matter what culture you're from, does not matter what language you speak, what caste you're from, whether you're rich or poor. It all depends on whether you get called by the spirit world. And what does it look like to be called by the spirit world? It's not a mumbo jumbo thing. It's a physical, it's real, it's an absolute, it's a real experience. And another word for a shaman could be a metaphysician. So we are metaphysicians. We are soul physicians. And a soul physician is someone who helps someone else find a connection to their soul, to their immortality, to that part of them that doesn't die. So there's a lot of physical aspects to being a metaphysician. being able to work with the elements, being able to connect with the soil and the land. So that's why there's this very strong physical experience of illness in being called, because your whole nervous system gets rewired. It's like you download like 10,000 volts of electricity, and in the beginning your body can't handle it, so you get the shakes and you get very sick. And then over time, your body integrates that and you get used to it. But one of the hallmarks of the calling is the psychic realm in terms of the dreams. So with me, I received and still receive a lot of dreams. And these are dreams that are prophetic, where in the beginning, where I was shown what was happening to other people. I was shown the future. I was shown the sicknesses of other people that I didn't know and how to help them. So that's why I wrote Leopard Warrior briefly. I wrote it to demystify and educate people about shamanism, in particular African shamanism, in the context of Ubuntu. Ubuntu is an old Southern African word that means humanity. It says, you cut my arm, red blood flows. If I cut your arm, red blood flows. We are all connected in a circle of humanity. And it says, I am what I am because of who we all are. So whatever community you're from frames you and helps you connect with who you are as a human being. And that community is not just in the seen world, it's also in the unseen worlds, in the world of the ancestors.
I couldn't agree more. That we are connected to everything there is, even the spirit world and our ancestors in the spirit world. So now you're working a lot with, you call it rewilding people,
Yes,
right?
yes.
What does that mean? What does that entail?
Well, to rewild someone means to help someone reconnect with their authentic, natural self, to help someone connect with their default, the default of who they are, their raw, their humanity. And in particular, I'm focusing on people who are brought up in the modern world, so in urban environments, people who have maybe got a bit disconnected from nature. And it's about helping them reconnect with nature through first connecting with their own body and their blood and bones and with their own ancestors. Because we're experiencing a crisis in the world right now. It's not just about human beings and whether we're okay. It's about animals getting extinct on a daily basis. So how can we, as the natural custodians of planet Earth, how can we help the plants and animals? Well, we have to learn the language of nature. We have to slow down. We have to connect with our bones and our blood. We have to connect with our ancestors and our dreams. And we have to feel the pulse of the soil and of nature. So this is what has inspired me to run these rewilding retreats, to educate people, but to also help them experience the raw primal beauty of planet Earth.
It's fascinating. So how do you take these suburban people that we all have become, that are sort of disconnected from the earth, and people worry about what's the next series coming out on Netflix? How do you take these people and ground them back into the earth? That do they go for like a week or 2 weeks, and what happens? Do you know what happens to them after they come back? Are they able to maintain what they learned, or they slip back into our lifestyle, Western lifestyle?
Well, it depends on the person, because all I can do is teach and guide. I can't do it for people. But what I'm inspired to do is help people, or inspire people to fall in love with nature. And the first point of falling in love with nature is for people to fall in love with their own heartbeat. So I take each person, and it might be a private session where it might be on Zoom, and I'll say, okay, and the listeners, everyone listening right now, how can you connect with nature? And the closest connection, the connecting point for each one of us right now in this moment with Mother Nature is, if we close our eyes, it's the breath, that wind going through us. And the next thing is our heartbeat, the pulse inside of us. So the first thing each person has to do in terms of rewilding is make a decision. Do you want to connect with your humanity? Do you want to connect with that part of you that does not die? Do you want to connect to your soul and to that electricity inside of you? Everyone has a choice. They can say no, they want to just have fun and play golf. It doesn't matter. Everyone has a choice. It's the greatest power anyone has. And if people say to me, yes, I want to connect to that part of me that doesn't die, I want to connect to that wildness inside of me, then I was, okay, close your eyes, welcome in the breath, and then feel that pulse inside of you, that heartbeat. Feel I call it the little drummer, because it's a percussive instrument. It's a drum beat in your chest. Feel that and let go into that without expectation, without wanting, just completely surrender and let go into your own heartbeat and breathe into it. And we can all do that now as I'm talking. It just takes a couple of minutes. You just close our eyes and just make a decision in your own mind and consciousness. Do you want to connect to your humanity, to your soul, to that part of you that is connected to Mother Nature? And if the answer is yes, of course, then welcome the breath into you. And then feel the pulse in your chest, feel your own heartbeat. Feel the electricity in your own heartbeat. And just feel it and let go into it, surrender to it. And then you might want to do a little prayer and just say, I call on the great mother or the great dreamer or the great mystery, and ask for strength in the journey in connecting to my humanity and to my soul, to my spirit, to that part of me that is connected to nature. And then let go with that prayer and just feel the pulse of your chest and of your drum, of your heart. And take another breath in and feel and let go. And then the other thing is not to be afraid of discomfort, because often when we make a decision to connect with our humanity and with our soul, we are shown where our obstacles are, where our shadow lies, where our difficulties are, where our anxieties and discomfort lie. And all I have to say to each person who's listening, welcome to the human race. The lotus flower teaches us that in order to blossom, you have to befriend the manure, you have to befriend the mud. And as the lotus befriends the mud, it blossoms and turns into this exquisite flower. So we have to befriend that part of us that we don't like, we feel uncomfortable about, or anxieties or discomforts, the inner weather. Part of rewilding is also befriending the weather inside of us. And then also befriending the weather outside and noticing with your conversation, do you moan about the weather? Do you go, oh, it's windy again, or it's raining? And I encourage people to see the weather outside as a spiritual journey. So learning to accept how the weather is, no matter whether it's hot, whether it's a hurricane, whether it's tornado, but to love the weather outside and notice what happens with your inner practice. When you can befriend the weather outside, what does it do for your inner practice? When you don't try and control the fact that it's raining or that it's snowing or that it's so hot, but you just go, oh, it's so exciting, it's so interesting. Mother Nature's teaching me all the time because of all her different colors and shades and movements. As you do that, then you start to accept the inner weather, your mood swings, your pain, your frustrations, your anxieties, all these things that make you who you are. And you stop fighting those shadow energies. And as you stop fighting them and you start befriending them, then you start to blossom like the lotus flower. And that is the whole point in the journey of becoming a human being. In Xhosa and in Zulu and in the traditional cultures in South Africa, we say that each person is born looking like a human being. But you have to make a decision to become a human being. And that decision takes work, and it takes consciousness, takes mindfulness, and it takes kindness. We have to be kind to ourselves, and we have to be patient.
So people who are listening, how can they tune into that and find their calling in life?
Well, first would be doing some kind of meditation or introspection like we're discussing now. And then it would be listening to the call of the spirit inside of you. So each person is called. Each person is called, and it's to accept your own calling, is to notice how are you being called. So listening to your dreams, listening to the breath inside of you. And if you feel confused, don't worry. Many people have been confused, and many people will continue to be confused. But this is a journey, and it's the hero's journey. So you have to become the hero of your own story. And to become a hero means that you have to overcome your obstacles. You have to smile at your obstacles and then get off, as I say, get your ass off the grass. So get up and do something. So if you're confused, then do some meditation. If you're confused, then go for a nice walk and listen to your heartbeat and watch the birds. Listen to nature, listen to your breath. If you're confused, watch your dreams, write them down. There's always going to be some aspect of concentration, of discipline, of mindfulness practice in any spiritual practice around the world. For thousands of years, every human being has been called in some way. The most important thing is, how are you being called? And to identify that requires some listening, some introspection, and to make a decision to become the hero of your journey, which means to smile at your obstacles and to do some kind of spiritual practice that will feed you, that will give you hope and inspiration. And if you don't know what the practice is, then go online and look at people who inspire you, that make you laugh, that make you cry, that touch the deepest part of you. Look at those people and see, how did they do it? Oh, they did yoga, or they did meditation, or they did dancing, or what did they do? Maybe that will work for me. Let me try it, and then just see. Because you are the hero of your journey, and you have the power and to make any decision that you want to make. And that's the incredible gift of being a human being, is that we have this power of choice. We can make a decision. We can choose to do something or not. It's incredible power.
No, it's good, very good advice. I often work with people too, and they'd say, well, I don't really like what I'm doing right now, but I don't know what it is. What am I supposed to do? I don't like my current job, but That is such good advice. You have to reconnect on a deep level and with nature to find that calling. And it takes work. It takes a lot of work to find the calling. It took me years and years, like 12 years to be exact. I mean, I was a programmer, a systems analyst, and I was good at it. I'm very logical. I'm extremely logical and very scientific. So I needed a lot of proof from the spirit world that I was moving in the right direction over and over again, to the point where my daughter would say, this is how many times do you need proof? This is the fourth time. I'm asking for another feather. Please let me find another feather. And then, just over and over. And it took me a long time to trust that. But I think you have such good advice, because it just trusting that and listening to your heart is so beautiful. So you talk a lot about the ancestors. What does it mean to connect with your ancestors?
So to connect with your ancestors means to connect with your forebears, your the parents who created you, and to connect with the tree of life that sustains you. And it means to just, in a very humble way, honor your forebears, your parents, your parents on your mother's side, and the parents on your father's side, and just to do a silent prayer and just give thanks to them for creating you and for helping to birth you. And as you do that, then you connect to the tree of life of the human race. And it's very, very important, because this is why we have war in the world right now, is because people are not connecting to their humanity. They are not loving their own ancestors and their own people. And what happens with human beings when they don't, they project their own anger, pain, and frustrations onto other people. And this is pure psychology, pure psychology. That stuff that you don't like inside of yourself, you're going to project on the other, those people who look different to you, because you are unhappy somewhere. Somewhere you're out of balance, somewhere you are unhappy. So to change all that and create more healing in the human race, we have to love our own families. It doesn't mean you have to like your ancestors, and it's not about liking or disliking. It's just to do a silent prayer of just saying thank you and I wish you well. It's beyond liking and disliking, good and bad. It's just to show, we say in Xhosa, show two things. We'll say mbeko, which means to show respect for your life, giving thanks. And the other thing we say is to show thobeka. Thobeka means humility, where we are not these isolated individuals where we just dropped in here from outer space. We are connected to a long line of humanity, and that's why we are alive. So to show humility means, okay, I'm here because of these people. I have this color eyes and hair and features because of a long line of other descendants. And I just need to just take a moment and just say, I see you, I honor you, Namago. And then that helps to engender the spirit of thobeka, the spirit of humility, where we are not these arrogant, narcissistic creatures, but rather creatures that are more open and more empathic and more humane.
So I know you mentioned that it's kind of beyond liking, liking your parents. Sometimes when you work with people, they'll say, I don't want to have anything to do with my parents. They were crazy. They were abusive. They were drug addicts, and etc. And there was a lot of trauma there. What advice do you have to those people that kind of are even afraid of, they don't even want to bring that thought in about, how can I send them love or honor them when they had such a traumatic experience?
Well, their traumatic experience is also keeping them in that trauma. So how can they release that traumatic experience? They have to learn to forgive, and that's really difficult, but they're in that position. They're in that position for whatever karmic reason, whatever they're there, that's where they are. Their connection to the human race is through the mother and father. It is through this portal, this human portal, and they can't ignore that. That's where their work is. That's exactly where their work is. So if they choose to not look at it, then they are shooting themselves in the foot. They are doing a disservice to themselves, because that's where their work is. So what I would encourage people to do in that situation where there's been a lot of abuse is to just, okay, this is terrible. To honor your ancestors and to honor your parents does not mean to like them, does not mean to go along with abuse, does not mean any of that. What it means is to just look at the parents or the say the grandparents. Imagine them as 6-month-old children with a shining light of humanity in their eyes, and that is what you're honoring. You are honoring that part of your parents or of your grandparents or ancestors that had that shining light of humanity, of Kanya shining, and you're honoring that. And if there is a lot of abuse and it's been very difficult for you, then what I'd recommend and what other African shamans have shared with me is to do a ritual where you're calling on your whole family line going back hundreds and thousands of years. So let's say it's your parents that you had struggles with, then you would call on your grandparents and great-grandparents in spirit and actually do a ritual where you call on them and just say, this is what's happened to me. And I can't cut these ancestors or these parents out of my blood, but they have treated me very, very badly, and I'm angry and I'm hurt. And I would like to call on all these other ancestors to help give me strength and help me to forgive my parents. Or even if you don't want to use the word forgiveness because it's too difficult, to help give me strength and help me to connect with my ancestry. Because right now, I don't want to have anything to do with my ancestors. I call on you to give me the strength to overcome this, to give me resilience, to give me peace, to give me healing. And then this is what's happened to me, and then really talk about it. But to create a ritual like that, it's important to either get help from someone or to do it with someone, because when there's a lot of emotion and there's a lot of pain, it's quite difficult to hold that space. So that's why it's really good to have a therapist or a friend or a mentor or someone who can do that ceremony with you. And that is your point to where you don't basically disown your own humanity, because people have a decision there. And it's also like, again, it's the hero's journey. You've been wounded, you've been badly hurt, but you are still connected to this family, no matter if you want to or not. You are connected to this family. So how can you overcome that obstacle with grace and dignity? So then you could also call on the Great Spirit, call on the Creator for strength, call on these two family lines and saying, this has happened to me and I was wrong, but I am your child. I'm part of this family. And I'm calling on strength. And I demand you to come and help me and give me strength, and just that prayer and just even expressing that anger and just sitting with that is extremely powerful. And that's why I'm saying if there's been a lot of abuse, it's really helpful to have a therapist or a friend or someone else to sit with you and do that ritual.
Yeah, it's very, I just have different words for it, but it's very similar to my own training in ancestral counseling, where when you have a client that's rejecting a parent for whatever reason, they're rejecting them, that pattern that they're rejecting has a tendency to come back into their life and repeat itself. So I was wondering, when you were saying, now if they don't if they can't make amends with their ancestors, it's like they're shooting themselves in the foot. Is it similar the way you see it, that things then repeat in some way? Or what do you mean by they're shooting themselves in the foot?
Well, they're doing themselves a disservice, because they're not finding healing that way. Because whatever they do, however they look, they are still part of that family. So for example, there's been a lot of abuse in terms of pioneering families because of coming from Europe, where there was a bloodbath in Europe. And then what did they do? They left Europe and went to America, went to North America. And there was religious persecution, there was famine, there was pestilence, there was war in Europe. And so they left Europe and then they went to, say, the colonies, like where there was South Africa, or they went to the North America, or they went to Australia. But what did they bring with them? They brought that war in their own hearts. And then they projected that war onto native and indigenous groups. And what happened there? Well, the war carried on. How can we stop that war from continuing? We have to do the work on ourselves.
So when you look at humanity today, and we still have so much racism and war in the world, what advice would you have to all the listeners? How can we help change that?
Love your own family. Love your ancestors. And it doesn't mean liking them. Get over this whole idea of likes and dislikes. Love your own ancestors and just light a candle for them, because that is your connection to the human race. And as you do that, it's going to create much more ease in terms of your relationships with other people and other cultures. Because human beings are complicated, but we also have this very strange mechanism where if we are not happy with ourselves or with our families, we project it onto other people, where it's seen as safer to project and offload. But now we know in the world that it isn't. You can't do that anymore. It's not working. It's not working, blaming another group of people for things that have got nothing to do with them. People are hurt. So the first thing is acknowledge your own hurt and your own pain and do the work, which means facing your own shadow, your own discomfort, your own anxieties, your own insecurities. And often insecurities, shadow energies, addictions are passed down the family line. Again, if you use the image of the lotus flower only blossoms when it befriends the mud. How can we befriend the mud? Just try, everyone listening, try lighting a candle and a stick of incense and dedicate it to your mother's ancestors and your father's ancestors, and just see what happens. Just see what happens in your life. Try it out, because your ancestors are beautiful. Whoever they are, wherever they are, they created you, and they are no better than my ancestors. They're no better or worse than Dr. Lotte's ancestors. We are all equal members of the human race. And to create another humanity, we have to accept one another. And the way we accept one another, we have to learn to accept our own families.
Such good advice. It's just beautiful the way you describe everything. I know we're coming up on a close of this podcast soon, but I wanted you to mention a little bit about, you have upcoming retreats, right, in Africa?
Yes. I've got my Dreams and Tracking in the Kalahari, which is in Botswana, coming up in February and March. And I have a couple of places left. So if people feel called, then please reach out or look at my website for an application form. And that retreat, the Dreams and Tracking in the Kalahari, is about rewilding, helping people to connect to their humanity. And it's done in a very gentle way. And people also have an opportunity to walk in the bush. We have 2 hours of walking in the morning every day, and people get to learn the ancient art of tracking, animal tracking. and learning from the animal world, and also learning from the Khoisan, which are one of the oldest living indigenous groups of people in the world. And they will be showing people how to forage for medicinal plants and how to connect with the land. And I have this vision of ancient and modern man sitting around a fire, revisioning our future. And that vision has come to pass because that's what I'm doing. So if you'd like to be part of that vision, then come and join us in the Kalahari.
And before we close, I know that you mentioned that you could do a little bit of chanting and let people know what that is all about.
Well, a Sangoma means people of the song, of the chant. So we are singing monks, you could say, African dancing and singing monks, because when we dance and sing or we play our drum, we help people to connect to the spirit world. So that's the Sangoma. So I can do a little bit of a chant and help people connect with the wind inside of them. We say umoya, umoya wako, which means the wind inside of you. The wind is your spirit. Umoya is wind, but it also means spirit. It also means soul. And in a nutshell, that's everyone has a responsibility to connect to their own spirit, to their own soul. And if they don't, then there is a mindless energy that permeates the human race. So we all have a responsibility to connect to our soul, but it's a decision we have. No one can force you to. Yeah.
Did you want to do a short chant or?
Okay, yeah, do a short chant. So here we go. So feeling the wind inside of you and feeling your breath. I'll get my rattles. Abazali bam ho vamo, abazali bam ho vamo, he abazali bam, he abazali bam ho. Kama gwini amanyange, kama gwini amanyange, ho amanyange, ho amanyange. Oh, volenle lamanyange, volenle lamanyange, volenle lamanyange, volenle lamanyange, he amanyange, he amanyange, he amanyange, he amanyange. Kama gwini amanyange, kama gwini amanyange, he amanyange. Him yangi, Vulen lelam yangi, Vulen lelam yangi, him yangi, oh hum yangi, ye hum yangi, oh yangi, Kama gwini yangi, Kama gwini yangi, hum yangi. Ay siyabulela manyange noThixo Camagu, vulenlela manyange noThixo Camagu, siyabulela manyange Camagu, oh Nkosi kakhulu manyange Camagu. So we say Camagu, which means with reverence, we give thanks to the Great Spirit and our ancestors for this gift of being human, of being a human being. Siti Camagu, we give thanks.
Just beautiful. And how can people work with you and learn more about you? Do you have a website?
Yes, my website is johnlockley.com. I'm sure it'll be on the notes of this podcast. johnlockley.com, and I do offer mentoring for people looking to connect more with their spiritual practice or with their creativity. I offer 3 or 7 mentoring sessions, like a package, to help people on the road to connect more with their dreams and their spirituality. And I also offer monthly ceremonies, monthly webinars. So people pay a small subscription, and they take part in the monthly webinar or monthly ceremony that I do every month. Yeah, so it's normally at the end of the month. So people can just go on my website and sign up for my newsletter, and then they will be connected to the work that I'm doing.
Well, thank you so much, John, for being a guest on the podcast today. And I will put your link as well in the podcast notes, and it's johnlockley.com. So thank you so much for taking the time to be a guest today.
Thanks so much for inviting me. Thank you.